Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr President. As a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, I recognise that for 230 years, migrants of many races and religions, amazing people from all over the world, have joined us to build our beautiful country into something greater than when they arrived. Now, though, we may be ending 2020 with 1.2 million Australians out of work and 1.2 million temporary visas. For 20 years, Senator Hanson has warned that this day would come. In 2016, the Productivity Commission issued its 700-page warning on the imbalance in our immigration policy. Their report questioned our high immigration intake's strain on infrastructure, the environment and quality of life in our capital cities. The government ignored the Productivity Commission. Why? To keep the flood of cut-price workers coming in and to hide the data showing a per capita recession. That led to a long-term pain on infrastructure, housing, wages, state budgets. The inevitable result of that is high unemployment and more underemployment. Many of these unemployed Australians are migrants who came to contribute their labour, yet now languish on job-seeker benefits they don't want instead of going to the job they do want. I congratulate one of my Labor colleagues on finally seeing the light and joining us in speaking up on the issue of excessive migration and foreign workers. People might not be aware that on the 3rd of May, in a Sydney Morning Herald opinion piece, Senator Keneally asked, quote, "Do we want migrants to return to Australia in the same numbers and in the same composition as before the crisis?" Senator Keneally's answer was no. The question now is, will Senator Keneally stand by her words, and will the Labor Party stand by their shadow immigration minister?
Very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. Well, One Nation submitted today a matter of public importance, and that wording was, when Australia restarts our immigration program, we do not want migrants to return to Australia in the same numbers and in the same composition as before the crisis. Well, I have to admit, they are not my words. They were Senator Keneally's words that she actually said in her statement. So it's quite interesting that I've always said there should be a debate on this, and I'm pleased to see that we actually got the call on this debate. Now, forcing the debate on immigration and foreign workers is often a thankless task. No one knows this more than me. When you bring up facts like more than half the nation's population growth since 2005 has come from overseas migration, you get called a racist. When you explain that, instead of flooding Australia with migrants to drive economic growth, we should be increasing productivity or investing in skills and training, people call you xenophobic. When you make common-sense statements like Australians should get a fair go and a first go at jobs, people call you a white supremacist. When you argue like Senator Keneally did the other day, through you, Chair, that once Australia starts its immigration program, migrants must not return to Australia in the same numbers and in the same composition as before the coronavirus crisis. People even might accuse you of stealing One Nation policy. This is why today I want to say thank you to Labor's Shadow Immigration Minister, Christine Keneally, because I know she will not be getting much support from her Labor colleagues. Reading through some of the recent comments made by Senator Keneally, I can only assume she has spent much of her time in quarantine reading through my speeches from 1996 and taking copious notes. And because so much of what she said could have been taken from comments and arguments I've made over the past 24 years, perhaps Senator Keneally might want to make an admission here today that she's a closet One Nation supporter. I know it took Mark Latham a couple of decades to come out of the One Nation closet, but look how great he's doing. He's a new man and loving it. So are the Australian people. Today I want to reassure the Senate that if Senator Keneally wants to cross the floor in support of her own comments and finds herself thrown out of the Labor Party for breaking ranks, I will always have a position in my office for talented immigration speechwriters such as herself. I know I don't often get a chance to congratulate my Labor Senate colleagues, but I always give credit where credit is due. And credit is due because by revealing herself by revealing herself as a covert to One Nation position on immigration, Senator Keneally has proven what I have long said is true. So powerful are my arguments on immigration that even a staunch opponent of One Nation like Senator Keneally will eventually be dragged, kicking and screaming, to supporting cuts to immigration and cuts to foreign workers. And I know there are many in the Labor Party, and even more among Labor's allies in the unions, who will agree with my position on immigration and foreign workers behind closed doors, but refuse to speak the truth publicly out of fear of being called a racist or some other meaningless insult. Right now, due to the coronavirus, there are millions of Australians unemployed or underemployed. These are the people we need to look after, not foreign workers. This is the debate we need to have. We can't go back to our old immigration program. Australians have a right to a job and a way of life that is not tied to welfare handouts. For decades, the Coalition and Labor parties have used mass migration and foreign workers to artificially pump up economic growth. For decades, they have cynically used insults and slurs to try and shut down this debate. For decades, they have refused to admit that this is creating problems with increased demand on our limited services, housing affordability, unemployment and underemployment, wage stagnation and congestion in our cities. Senator Keneally and I have now warned each and every one of you that if we continue down the same path of the mass immigration and foreign workers, our economy will come crashing down. I moved a notice of motion today on the floor of Parliament, and I'll just read out some of the comments in this notice of motion. And it's relying on high levels of immigration to boost population to fuel economic growth is arguably a lazy approach. Letting lots of migrants come to Australia to drive economic growth rather than increasing productivity or investing in skills and training is a lazy approach. Instead of letting lots of migrants come to Australia to drive economic growth, we should be increasing productivity or investing in skills and training. As of June 2019, there were 2.1 million temporary visa holders in Australia. Australia hosts the second largest migrant workforce in the OECD, second in total number only to the US. 1 in 5 chefs, 1 in 4 cooks, 1 in 6 hospitality workers and 1 in 10 nursing, support and personal care workers in Australia hold a temporary visa. Another one, when Australia restarts its migration program, we must understand that migration is a key economic policy lever that can help or harm Australian workers during the economic recovery and beyond. And when Senator Davey talks about regional areas, it says here, we must also ensure that regional areas don't only get transient people but community members who will settle down, buy houses, start businesses and send their kids to the local school. The whole fact is that the Labor said I was pulling a stunt. No, all those words were from Senator Keneally, her article. That was Labor's Shadow Minister for Immigration, and yet they said I was pulling a political stunt. No, I wasn't pulling a political stunt. The fact is that I called Labor out for what they are, nothing but pulled a political stunt themselves. And Keneally was the one that actually made those comments, but Labor clearly does not stand by them because they did not support the notice of motion today. So who's really pulled the political stunt? They use it when it suits them. As I said, high immigration props up our economy has been used by both the major political parties. And I will have my comment about Senator Faruqi today and her comment saying that One Nation stands by white supremacy. At no point have we ever, and I'm sick of the lies put across in this chamber with regards to One Nation, and I'm going to call it out for what it is. And I encourage people to go to One Nation's website, look at our immigration policy, which is non-discriminatory. So that is purely lies. And to talk about our immigration policy, we need the debate. Australians want the debate.